Hello, this is Matt Hedrick with the West Virginia Coalition on Homelessness. And like we said before, this webinar is covering the West Virginia Balance of State Coordinated Entry for SSVF Access Points for SSVF providers within the Balance of State COC. With me also is
Jessica Manitan.
And we're just going to go over in the system how we're going to talk a little bit about SSVF as an access point, and we'll have a brief keynote here, or PowerPoint, and then we're going to just dive into the system and show you how the new workflow works with SSVF in regards to diversion / rapid resolution, and as well as SSVF as an access point for the coordinated entry system. So, as most of you probably know, the balance of state, we cover 44 of the 55 counties in the state of West Virginia. So, we're kind of spread out and large. And one thing that was a COC that we have to do, that's mandated to do, is to have a coordinated entry system so that all clients can go through a process of entry based on prioritization so that the right housing intervention can be applied to the right client. So what we've done in reaction to the large geography we have to serve is we've broken the COC out into 8 distinct regions based off of providers and kind of geography of the COC. So with that, all these regions adhere to the same processes. However, to make like a little more digestible to make the system work a little bit better, there's the 8 regions, and there are regional meetings plus regional calls for both access points and for housing providers that occur. And through the regional meetings, it's been determined that some shifting of the counties had to occur, and so we made those adjustments accordingly. And this is currently the setup of the 8 regions within a COC. So we hear us talk about coordinated entry access points. Up until recently, the access points have been outreach providers within the COC. Shelter providers, our intake line, our coordinated entry intake line, housed here at the coalition. And now we're going to add SSVF providers throughout the COC as an access point. So a place where a client who is experiencing homelessness can access services and get prioritized for housing. So you have your access points, and then those all feed to our housing prioritization guide. They feed client information to our housing prioritization guide, and then they get prioritized and housed accordingly off of that guide. So this is kind of a sketch of how it kind of works. It's a little crazy. I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen this before. Of course, at the top we have diversion or rapid resolution. At the top we have all clients coming in should try to get diverted from the system, and then we have our access points, be it emergency shelter, the outreach provider within a given area, our coordinated entry intake hotline or coordinated entry intake line, and now SSVF providers throughout the COC. So we did this sort of in response because we used to have sort of a more of a shotgun approach to how we um, approached housing interventions and things like that. But we really decided that with coordinated entry, we wanted to really focus on pinpointing those folks that are most in need of housing and are most apt to to go into housing. So you might have seen this before. We borrowed this from our friends at Org Code Consulting. We kind of break our clients, or we look at our clients down in kind of different universes of where they are within either their homelessness experience or where they are just as they go through the process. So we start with this great big red circle, which is sort of the overall universe of all clients experiencing homelessness. This universe is the largest one. This is anybody who might be experiencing homelessness within the COC. And this is an impossible number to gauge, and we won't know everybody who's experiencing this because they don't either present for services. We can't find them via outreach. We just don't know they're out there. So it's that overall universe. And within that, you have a smaller universe, this kind of purple universe here, And these are all those clients that we know that do exist and are experiencing homelessness, though we might not know their name. We might have had contact through outreach, but we haven't really been engaged with them or anything like that. But we just know they're there. And then we get in another universe. Within that universe is this green universe, which is those who have provided consent and we know their name. So they might be engaged in like path or street outreach. They might have come into shelter for service. They might have received some kind of service only within the COC, and they've provided consent. We know their name. We might have found them during the PIT. Things like that. So that universe of clients, of course, we used to just, since we knew them and we provided consent, we knew their name, we used to try and house from there. But even that is a larger universe to really make it hard to actively and efficiently provide good housing intervention. So within that is this yellow universe. These are those clients that are engaged in services. So they've come in. They've been in a shelter for a while. They've been on the street working with a path provider. But these are the ones who have an active housing plan in place, or they're really working on getting their housing resolved and taken care of, and also with work via case management and housing plans. And then in the middle of this universe, the smallest universe of these clients are those clients that are imminently housable. All their paperwork's in order, everything's ready to go. We could pick up a phone at 1:10 on a Friday afternoon and have them in housing, by 5 o'clock. Things like that. Of course, you don't want to ever house anybody on a Friday afternoon, but that's a case management thing. but so with that in mind, so 1:10 on a Friday, we can get them in housing by 5 o'clock. Those folks that are right there, ready to go, we can get them right in there. And that's where we really want to prioritize. Those are the clients we really want to focus on if we can, because those are the ones that are ready and imminently housable. So with that, taking all these universes into consideration and what we want to look at, we have our housing prioritization our guide, which is a tool built out of HMIS using HMIS data that has kind of 3 levels to it that we utilize when prioritizing and placing people into housing through the coordinated entry system. So the first piece of this is just a by name list, more or less. It's just everybody who is enrolled in a street outreach project, a coordinated entry project, or like an access point like SSVF will be, or an emergency shelter. Everybody's experiencing homelessness within the COC. And that just kind of gives us an idea of, the overall general, that big universe of folks there. Then within that guide, we step down another place, and these are that yellow universe. Those folks that are engaged in housing. We know they have a housing plan in place. We're really working on them to work with them to get engaged in housing or to get placed in housing. This is where the VI SPDAT occurs. This step in the process. It's where the client can begin the process and work toward getting all their paperwork together to get them into housing and other information. And then the third and final step of the guide process is our actual prioritization piece. This is where they have all paperwork together. They're eminently housable. They're what we call housing actionable. They can be prioritized based off of various criteria, not just VI SPDAT score, but other criteria that is drawn out in assessments through HMIS. And then based off of those criteria, they get a score. 1.8 through 1.0 is those folks that are need a high intervention. Your mid range, your orange range on the guide are your 2 somethings, and those are kind of your rapid rehousing, kind of mid acuity folks with VI SPDAT, and then 3.0s are everybody else. Those folks that those folks that can if there's no other resources available, they can pretty much, be prioritized lowest, but they can also go into housing as well. So taking that guide in consideration, the access points, our regional concept, there's been there's regional calls that occur. For housing providers and access points throughout the COC. These happen every other week, and based off your region, whichever region you're providing services in. So we start out with the housing prioritization guide from HMIS. You have your regional access point calls and housing provider calls, and that's when the access points and housing providers within the COC or within the regions can sit down on a call with our coordinated entry staff and HMIS staff here within the coalition office, and go through the guide, go through the actionable folks, and make those housing placements or referrals to housing. So that's just kind of a quick overview of kind of how the process works up till now. And now like I said before, up until very recently, our access points have been those outreach providers, emergency shelters, and the coordinated entry systems intake line. But now we're going to add SSVF to this mix of access points because for a lot of different reasons. You might, as SSVF providers, you may see clients that never either presented shelter or you might see clients that might not go through the process in any other enter this process, enter into the coordinated access system in any other way. Especially in areas where you might be the only resource in the community, and so in an effort to better serve those clients, not just your SSVF eligible folks, but those folks that might be experiencing homelessness within your given communities, you guys are going to be incorporated in as an access point within your respective COC region. So with that, let's go ahead and go into the system and check out the workflow and see how that works in regards to HMIS. Give me one quick second here. Okay. So, if everybody can see my screen, I'm here in the service point home screen. I'm shadowing a user within our COC. And there's actually a couple changes that happen. One change that's going to happen to your HMIS workflow for SSVF, and then of course the added coordinated entry access point piece as well. So I'm already in backdate mode. So let's look at the change that talks about diversion or rapid resolution in regards to your SSVF clients. So everybody will see, and when they go into enter data as mode now, the same providers they've always seen, your prevention and rapid housing for your SSVF, but you also see this CES access point provider when you go into enter data as mode. But we're going to talk first about that how you guys will see diversion or how to track rapid resolution when working with an SSVF standard SSVF client. So first of all, we'll just go in here into SSVF rapid rehousing for this agency. And then we'll go into client point. And we'll just search for our client. And then Jessica's going to talk to you a little bit about what you'll see when you go in.
Okay, so everything is going to look mostly the same here on we got our profile right here. The biggest thing I want to touch on is the diversion or the rapid resolution piece. And there will be, it's located here on your client profile. So again, this is for those individuals that are veterans that are coming in that you are trying to do rapid resolution with, see if you can do that with them first. And so you'll find it here on your client profile. So what we have is two separate little sub-assessment boxes here. The first one is the actual diversion assessment. And you'll select this add button, and then it will pop up the whole assessment that you will complete. And then here we have the history of attempts. So once you do that or attempt that diversion piece, you can add here the agency, which staff member, the date, what was the outcome, and then the end date. And you can save that and list it there. So this will then show if they were diverted or if they were not diverted. And we will be having in the very near future an actual, well, we won't as HMIS staff, but the balance of state, Zach Brown will be having a diversion training quite soon for SSVF providers. And so he'll go through all of the information pertaining to diversion and go through the diversion questions with you in detail and be able to talk about all of that. So that will be forthcoming, but I wanted to show you here on in your client record, it's going to be here under the client profile. And so that's where you will complete the diversion or rapid resolution piece.
Awesome. So, and then the rest of your, as far as that goes, after you go through that part, the rest of your standard SSVF workflow remains the same, of course, households, releases, entry, exit, services, etc. But when working with a client that might not be necessarily eligible for SSVF, and they're not going to become an SSVF client, but we still want to make sure they're still experiencing homelessness within our communities. And as our role as access points, we would like to get them to the housing prioritization guide on the COC level so that the correct referral can be made for housing intervention that will work for them. So that's where if we change out of this interdata as provider to our new CES Access provider, and then go back into that same client. Then we see kind of a slightly changed workflow here. So we still have our same client profile with our client record, client demographics, etc. We still see our provider profile like we saw before. However, we work through the same process as far as households that we've always worked with. When doing the HMIS standard workflow, we create our household, we create our ROI. But when we get to the entry exit piece, so we record our project start and we hit add entry exit. Of course, we do our standard, we select all applicable household members. Our test client here has quite a few households, but usually they should only have one, as you know. But let's just say that this is the household we're working with. So we select our applicable household members. Then we select our entry type as HUD. Then we hit save and continue. When we go into this provider, we then see our new assessments for the coordinated entry process. So this is the process where we collect information on these clients that can get them to the housing prioritization guide. So what might look a little bit different for you is here you might see this box here in the middle of the assessment that allows you to see three different assessments, kind of representing the three different steps we were talking about, or the three different parts of the housing prioritization guide. So as we scroll down, the first one, of course, is our diversion from homelessness profile. And if you've worked with this client previously and diverted them from homelessness already, that information, of course, will carry over from the profile tab. But if you haven't worked with them as of yet and you're going to divert them, then this is where you'll see the same diversion from homelessness assessment or the history of attempts that Jessica was speaking of a moment ago. And you could add additional assessments, sub-assessments here if you divert them multiple times. And of course, you can record your history of your attempts. So you divert them, and they, or you resolve kind of what their immediate issue is. But if they come back, or if they reappear, they're still enrolled in your access piece. Then at that point, you can always go back into their entry exit record, and like during their follow up and things like that, you can go into that and say they're they can't resolve their own homelessness even after multiple diversion or rapid resolution attempts, and they do need to be actively engaged in tracking down housing options. Then they can go to that middle part of the guide, the housing engagement piece, and to access that assessment, you just kind of click on this tab, and that will bring up this tab, so you'll get additional information. So we have, general information on this assessment, information you might have already collected based off the client's, previous history. Um, does the client have a disabling condition? You might have already recorded that, but you also want to record, what their current, or what their residence prior to the project start date, before they came in, or their current home housing situation. So let's say they're in a place not meant for human habitation. And then, of course, we get our chronic homelessness questions, those questions that determine chronic homelessness. It's always, again, we always stress this. Even if there's a value in here already, it's always, paramount to make sure that this is accurate and up to date as of right now, because this client might not, might have been housed since then. So you want to, and they've returned to homelessness. So you want to make sure that it's accurate and up to date as of the current moment. And that of course reflects what their housing situation is, and might impact their prioritization score. Client contact information, this can be captured here. It's also captured, on the profile as well. And that's the way that, if the client is on the street in a place of every habitation, if we want to get, if you have outreach in your community, you want to, let them know that outreach is, that this is where this client is. It's really great to capture that information as best you can, because it's really beneficial for outreach if you have outreach in your community, or if you need to contact the client for whatever reason, as they work through the coordinated entry process to gather that information. So that's where it's the best way to find them. Phone number, alternate phone number, or any kind of email address or other electronic communication. And again, we have our county parish question, which has been around for a while, but we want to record the county in which the client would like to be housed. And then we have some housing engagement information questions here. And what these questions do is kind of give us an idea, as we're engaging with the client, what kind of housing options they might need, but also kind of just, showing that we record this to show that they're engaged in a housing plan, so they can go to that engage part of the housing prioritization guide, so they can start in the process. So we just select their housing engagement category, be it individual, family, or transition-aged youth. And transition-aged youth, of course, is 18 to 24-year-olds. Individual is just an individual, and a family is any household with one adult, at least one adult, and one child. When did the client engage in housing? So when did the engagement actually occur? What was the when did they engage? When did the housing plan start? When did you get this information from the client, so they can engage in housing and get on the guide? So we can just put a date in there. Which agency is the client primarily engaged with? So they might, be working with a couple of different agencies within your community, be it a PATH or a shelter, or you as an SSVF provider, or SSVF Access Point. But it's whatever, the client's working with the majority of the time. And then, record where the client is staying right now. Are they staying outdoors, or are they sheltered somewhere? Then you have housing option information. So once a housing option is available, what size unit will be needed? So what number of bedrooms will the client need? If available, would the client be interested in a shared housing or roommate option? Of course, that's not um, the greatest plan for everybody, but some clients might know somebody from the street. They're also engaged in this process right now, or might know someone else that might be a roommate option that they can work with. And sometimes we find that we can have success by putting folks in a shared housing or roommate option situation. But of course, that's up to the client's that's client choice as well. So we answer yes or no. And then once a housing option is available, will the client require any special accommodation, such as like first floor access, wheelchair access, etc.? And we record that yes or no. And then we specify in this text box below what kind of accommodation. And as we scroll down here, as an important part of the engagement process, is doing the VI SPDAT on the client. For you existing or longtime providers on the call, of course, the VI SPDAT. You've done it before. So you have your breakouts here, your VI SPDAT for individuals. We've included a script here. You have your VI SPDAT for individuals, for families, and for tradition-aged youth. And you record the correct VI SPDAT accordingly. And really, during this engagement process, record just one VI SPDAT for the client because that helps as they go through the process. We've also included this question here. Does the client's severe mental illness or any other circumstances prevent you from completing the VI SPDAT? This is primarily for outreach workers who might not be able to, for one reason or another, collect the information that's on the VI SPDAT due to like extreme mental illness, something like that, where they really can't, gather that information. But we don't want those folks falling through the cracks. So we've included this yes/no question. And then if it can't be conducted, give a reason why. But by and large, we'll say no because that's not normally the case. We just don't want those few occurrences to cause a client to fall through the cracks. So then we can just hit save and exit. And we've engaged them in housing. So on our guide, they'll go to that second part that we were talking about earlier, the engagement guide. So as time goes on and they work more and more through the process, we've working with them, either we're engaged with them or outreach is engaged with them, or they're working through coordinated intake or whatever access point they've accessed and they've been engaged with. They've gotten their paperwork together. They've gotten kind of everything together so they can be imminently houseable or actionable, like we were talking about before. Then the next step is to complete the other assessment for actionable. And we do that in the same place as we did the engagement piece. We go to their exit record for CES access, click on the edit pencil, then click on this BOS3 CS housing actionable. And this is where we gather, this final additional information, including their, disabling condition information. We see that this client hasn't been fully verified, so we'll go ahead and, verify those. We ask a question about trimorbidity and whether or not this client is trimorbid, and there's instructions there, so we determine that. We can determine this client is not trimorbid. If they have income from any source, and of course, this information carries over from their entry here, the chronic questions. The same goes for the contact information and the county information and the engagement information. And of course, we have VI SPDATs included here for reference. And then we also have this final question here. That's the kind of a permanent housing information question. So it asks if you or the engaging agency have obtained, the following paperwork. So kind of a proof of citizenship, or if they're going into PSH, verification of disability, or verification of homelessness. Of course, we don't want this to this is, kind of, is this, do they have all the paperwork together? Are they ready to go on to that final actionable stage? Yes or no? And then we can hit save. And let's click on no on this. And there we go. So then when we go to pull the guide now, since we've gone through this process, with the clients, they've gone through all three steps of the process. Then they will go to the housing prioritization guide. When the regional calls occur, they can get prioritized, they can get placed in housing, and they can hopefully go into a permanent housing situation and resolve their homelessness. So then after that, of course, after that occurs and they have a housing move-in date and they've officially, moved into whatever their project may be, at that point, then we exit them from our CES access. We select a destination. And we save and continue. And then we just have our general information here. And then we save and exit. And they have been, they've entered into rapid rehousing. They've moved on. We've exited them from our CS access point provider, so that they're no longer pulling to the guide because they're permanently housed. And then we can move on to the next person. So that's by and large, the big change, how to utilize this within the system, and the way the workflow goes. Jessica had something she wanted to add?
Yes, I just want to let everyone know that this might all happen at the same time. So if you are having someone come in and you are assessing them as an access point for housing options, you can complete that diversion and rapid resolution piece. And if they're not able to be diverted or have any other options, and you go right into that second tab for the engagement piece, and if they have their, an ID or a birth certificate or something, and you can go ahead and get those and then move on to that third one and do that as well. So this doesn't have to be a process that is a length of time between each one. It could all happen at the same time while they're there with you. So just wanted to let everyone know that this is just done as, you attempt those different strategies. So trying to help them resolve, or if we need to go ahead and assess them to get onto the guide for other housing options.
Excellent point. Okay, great. So that's pretty much the process, though, how it'll work. I mean, as we work through this process, of course, keep in mind that everything's always kind of in work. And as we flow through it, there might be modifications as time goes on. But of course, we will always notify you whenever those modifications occur. And we'll be having diversion or rapid resolution training that delves deeper into the actual processes of that, outside of just the HMIS piece. So be on the lookout for those. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always contact us at the help desk, HMIShelp@WVCEH.org. And right now, I'm going to look and see if we have any questions. If anybody's add any questions to our chat box here, or if you have any questions right now, this is a good time to ask those. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. But again, if any questions do arise, we should be able to. These providers are built out in the live site right now, and they should be live and available to you after this call. So so if you have any questions or anything looks weird or strange or anything like that in regards to the HMIS workflow as a CS access point, then always, again, feel free to contact us at the help desk. And also be on the lookout for your regional calls, because into your access points now, you'll have your regional calls that will occur. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And take care.